Newt Gingrich, a Fox News political analyst. Newt, great to see you and great to have you with us. I want to ask you to kind of do both of these topics with me here. I'd like to start with what's going on with this SAVE Act, because obviously you know the machinations of the Hill better than anyone. And John Thune is saying he cannot get this voter ID passed. He can't even get enough Republican support to break the filibuster rule in order to get it over the hump. What do you think about President Trump's commitment to that bill in the face of everything else?
Well, first of all, something like 80% of the American people want to make sure that only Americans vote in our election.
That's right.
It's about a 5-to-1 majority. So if you're worried about the American people, they're going to be with President Trump. Second, I think it's interesting that the Constitution works. The president, as powerful as he is, and he's one of the most powerful presidents in American history, he still has to go to the Senate. He still has to go to the House. He still has to deal with the Supreme Court because the Constitution works. My advice, as somebody who began working with Reagan in 1974 and who served 8 years with him when I was in Congress and he was president, my advice is to pick up a Reagan trip. And that is, this is a big issue. It's an issue where the country's about 5-to-1 in favor of the president. And what he ought to do is spend the next 3 months and go to 20 or 30 or 40 places, have huge rallies with a simple model. Only American citizens should vote. Now, that means the left wing of the Democratic Party will go crazy, as we saw in the primaries this week, where genuine radical socialists began beating the traditional Democrats. But I think the president is in a strong position to rally the whole country. Right now, he's trying to win this as an inside fight in Washington. That's very hard to do. But if he goes to the whole country, the Democrats have two choices. They can find a way to cave, get the issue off the table, or they can go into the general election as the pro-illegal immigrant voting Democrats at a 5-to-1 disadvantage. Yeah. Either way, President Trump wins.
So quick question on this before we move on to the larger issue of America at 250. But, you know, one of the hang-ups is the mail-in voting part of this bill, because some Republicans feel like they need mail-in voting and that it works well for them and that their constituency wants it. Do you recommend peeling it apart from the voter ID issue? Because the president has said he won't do that.
Well, I think in some states, California is the best example. The level of disgrace, the degree to which all of this has been used to corrupt the election system is frankly beyond belief. If you look at this most recent election in California, notice how long it takes to count the votes, and notice that no Republican, none, ever gains ground. Now, that ought to tell you something about how rigged these elections are. And I'm willing to stick with the president on this. But again, I suggest if he went to the country would overwhelm people who currently have reservations.
All right, so take it to the people. As you point out, the Constitution is stubborn, and the president has run up against it on this issue. So you're recommending that he take it to the people. I think he kind of started that last night. He's been talking about this quite a bit. Let's take a look at these numbers about how whether Americans are proud of their country. Dramatic, and I think disturbing drop in these numbers. When you look back at 2001, 87% of Americans said that they were proud to be American. The latest polling is a Fox News poll. 47% say that they are not proud to be Americans. What goes through your head when you see these numbers and we are at this sort of like precious preservation of our country at 250 years, Newt?
Look, we've had 40 or 50 years of really left-wing, anti-American educational propaganda, brainwashing young people. It's not a great shock to me. I mean, how do you end up with three hardline, unbelievably left-wing and frankly crazy people winning primaries last night or the day before yesterday in New York? That's because thousands and thousands of young people have been told only negative things about America. Now, the fact is, this is the freest country in history. The Constitution does work. Yeah. The Declaration of Independence is the greatest break in giving people, not kings, not dictators, people, real power. And we have to be more militant. And frankly, we're going to just have to overhaul all of the major institutions of education because all of them are deeply anti-American.
Yeah, I mean,
be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.